hello again. So I've targeted a spot on the moon. I'm kind of curious if I can hit it. It's not a perfect spot. So an issue with direct descent. Direct descent is, let's see, so here I am, man, crazy views, right? So from here to where I switch into the moon sphere of influence is about 3 days, 7 hours. Now the moon doesn't rotate very fast, right? One side is always facing the Earth, so it rotates around. It's called face locked. So, the one face is always facing the Earth. That's where the concept of the dark side of the moon comes from. There's this, back side where we can't actually see it. If you're from Earth, you can't see that other side of the moon. So I'd love to land on this side of the moon, but of course, because of rotations and things, I'd have to target a bit differently. So in the time it's going to take, the 3 days, the moon's going to rotate a little bit. So I'm not going to hit where this orange line is. I'm going to hit over here. So let's see. I'd have to come in quite differently to hit this side, and I'm not going to bother wasting the energy to try that. I'm going to hit this spot, which should be in the sunlight by then, because that's where if you don't worry about the moon rotating. It should be here, which should still be sunlit. And there's a specific crater I've targeted there, so if I can hit inside that crater, it should be smooth. So let us find out. So let us zoom to this sphere of influence. And should have plenty of battery to get there. I've locked some batteries, so it looks like I am cheating a little bit. I should have brought along more physical battery. I added a sliver of battery you can't even quite see in there, but I've locked charge into that, I've locked charge into that, so once that sliver of battery runs out, it should stall, and I'll still have enough charge left over to do what I want to do. So approaching the moon, let's see, does it still kind of show the same spot? Yeah, it looks like it's rotating. Actually, I might have even been able to adjust to hit this larger crater, but yeah, who knows? I'll live and learn, right? That's the thing with the moon. Humanity threw a lot of different probes at the moon, into flybys, into orbit, at the surface of the moon, and didn't have a ton of successes. It is a tricky business. There's a lot that can happen on the way to the moon. So it's still burning hydrazine, so it looks like I somehow still have control of the vessel, which is nice. So I'm trying to move around this blue marker. Stop spinning. Because the closer I am to the moon, the more energy, the more delta V it's going to take in order to make these changes, to make it shift around. So I'm trying to still target that. Oh, it's kind of moving that way, moving this way, moving that way. I might be able to correct on the way down, who knows, but still kind of targeting the same area, but it's slipped. That's one thing I've never gotten. I don't think I've even done very well with it, in my opinion, in stock, targeting a very specific spot. So let's see, what values am I going to need here? Let's just drop those for a moment. What am I going to want in here? I should probably have a new window, just like I have for docking, just so it isn't all cluttery. But I'm going to want suicide burn, time to impact, things like that. Now, I don't really care about, there we go, time to impact, about the biome I come down into. I don't really care about that. Okay, time to impact and suicide burn. Infinite. So sometimes suicide burn is a bit weird of a measurement. I don't know why this black square keeps showing up. I haven't noticed that really before. So it might be some odd artifact of the new moon textures. Okay, so time to impact 17 hours. I definitely don't have 17 hours of fuel. Let's see, do I still have this hydrazine locked? Yes, I do. And I'm not sure why it's not showing me the delta V of this stage, but that might be an unpleasant surprise if I find out that I can't use that stage, but not too far above the surface. I'm going to want to start slowing down. Okay, time to impact, because I only have, you know, a minute of burn or so left in that stage, right? Okay, so approaching the moon. Time to impact is now under an hour. Okay, so let's save there. Obviously, I'll want to stop this tumbling when I get closer. So I'm coming in really fast. Okay, so time to impact, suicide burn. Okay, that's about 6 minutes before we hit, so we want to do it before that. Okay, that's 10 minutes before. Let's give that a shot. Let's zoom to about there, and of course, let's see, I can kind of set my direction. Oh, let's see. I still want to show that. Yeah. So there's been a little bit of motion. So however it's estimating that, that was moving before I did my correction or anything like that. So, and now that I'm close enough, I'll unlock all these batteries. There we go. So can I see my target right now? So there's this larger one, so I can see it. So my target is one of the little craters there. Okay, and so I'm still seeing the time to that node, so that's probably around when I should start burning. I don't think it'll really cost me any, it won't do me any harm to start burning a little before that. Oh, it's actually starting to give me suicide burn data. Interesting. So maybe it won't show more than, a certain number of hours, which is clearly not right. If I'm going to hit the ground in 17 minutes, the suicide burn time can't be an hour and a half. Okay, so let's see, time to impact. Yeah, so I'll spend this stage now. You can obviously try to set up for a more precision mission if you like, but I'm not going to do that now because I'm not very good at that. If you want to do something more like what the Americans did, I think it was called Surveyor. Although their rocket design was so much different. It was one of the first very successful hydrogen upper stages. I think it used a Centaur to throw quite a bit of mass at the moon. Okay, so let's see if I can light up this engine manually here. Very stable, risky, and nope. I geared it up. So, oh, there we go. Okay, good. So it did light. So for some reason I had it off. I don't know why it was red. Because it had been on. I mean, I haven't even just left the game open overnight. So I'm not sure why it was showing red, but hey, there we go. So now I've got my time and my delta V values. So I know that I have 6 minutes of burn time before I hit the ground. So if I was to do a straight suicide burn, I would do it 6 minutes before I hit the ground. So I want to kind of angle a bit that way. Like here, let's get you to stop spinning. I don't have too much hydrazine left in that transfer stage. Like I want to kind of go that way a bit if it is even meaningful. It takes a little bit of delta V to actually do that. Or what if I come in slower? If I brake now, that'll give the moon a bit of time to rotate. So what about that in theory? So if let's say I spend my kilometer per second of delta V right up here, way away from the surface. So that's less efficient, like because I'm spending the fuel way much higher above the gravity well of the moon. If I burn it out here, but I've got plenty of delta V. So there's a number of ways to think about that concept, but that's one way I think about it. Like you're spending it when the fuel is being spent at a higher. It's more of it still in gravity, and it's going to become more valuable as I get closer. Another way to think of it, of course, is it actually seems like it's arcing in. Oh, right. So is the fact that the closer to the surface you are, the faster you're going. And so that, to me, that kind of argument relies a bit more on an understanding of like the calculus of the physics of motion. In any given unit of time, you've traveled further, so your force is being applied over a longer distance. That's how I think of it that way, but I really don't think it's a very intuitive way to think about it for somebody who hasn't studied physics. Okay, so let's do that burn soon. It looks like I've kind of got that worked out. Actually, yeah, let's get it to target the node. And this will burn out most of this stage. I might even just spend the whole thing. Just this for the node, for this maneuver node, I've lined it up a bit. So it's good. I find the fuel for this engine actually unsettles pretty frequently, pretty quickly, which I find for a lot of engines that just doesn't actually happen. Even though, you know, there is ullage and limited ignitions and real fuels, most of the engines are very, very forgiving, which is definitely good for new players. I'm not going to complain about that at all. So it looks like it's staying on that target, which is really, really good. Okay, so I'll remove this just so I can. Interesting. It moved when I canceled the maneuver node, so perhaps it was showing for after my targeted burn. So fair enough. I will just keep going through the burn. Yeah, it looks like it is moving gradually closer towards that. So that's because there's going to be more time. So I'm gonna the moon's going to have more time to rotate there. So I'll stop because it's still in there, and that might be enough. So you can see if you just compare the numbers. So let's say I'm currently moving this speed. It's going to increase as as I fall into the gravity well of the moon. But this might still just be enough, even without the transfer stage. I'm trying to remember offhand. I actually don't know what fuels the Soviets used. They had a very interesting moon probe program because they didn't really have a truly serious contender to put humans in lunar orbit or onto the surface of the moon. Like the N1 was a very difficult rocket that they knew was failing. But they did a lot of programs to land on the moon. Their first landers were very interesting looking, and Raider Nick has them in his Soviet probes pack. And I personally have flown those onto the moon, and they're very, very tricky. But it's done with that little R7, similar to the Soyuz rocket. It doesn't put a ton of mass on the moon, but it does definitely put a cool looking probe on the moon. And after that, they had some other landers. I think they had. I can't remember if they had the lunar rover before the Americans landed on the moon or not, with humans. And they had a number of attempts at a sample return from the surface of the moon, because they're kind of trying to get a win and beat the Americans in some sense before the Americans got humans onto the surface of the moon. I remember there's kind of an experimental option. It kind of looked a little glitchy last time I used it, but where it would show my path between where I am now and where let's see, landing sim, nope. Landing prediction, I already have that open. There's just so many options in MacJab. There's one that will show the path. Let's see, surface maybe? The landing path, no. Target. No. Okay, so I'll get rid of this this landing sim option. And I came up. I'm pretty sure that's one of the names of the SpaceX barge landers. But I just needed to change this window, so I didn't keep thinking I lost it as one of the many custom info windows. Okay, so world trajectory, show trajectory. I don't feel like it's showing it, but I suppose it might just be all just directly along my path. Don't know what with descent policy is. Okay, so it looks like I'm in that. Actually, if I slow down a little more, I'd be a bit closer to the center of that target. Where am I? I don't even... Oh, there we go. There's the craft. Okay. Am I focused on... Yeah, I'm focused on the moon, so it kind of limits how far I can zoom in. Yeah, it looks like... well, I guess I also would want to burn sideways just a little bit to bring that back. So that's what I'll do with the rest of this stage then. I will kind of spend it to try to hit. So you can very clearly tell where I'm trying to land now. Come on. So there's the big crater, and from here you can see, well, okay, I think it's this one, might be this one. The surface of the moon is interesting. Okay, so I've got it aimed. Let us spool up the get the engine settled and spool. Okay. So now this stage is spent. And that's the tiny amount of mass I've got in kind of sphere of influence of the moon approaching the surface. So these, only a little bit of hydrazine left in these. You actually may as well just spend it as I can. It's not going to have much of an impact on what is going on. See, I'm still accelerating, I'm still gaining speed, and you can see the g-force. Only slowing myself down by, what, 1/50th of a g or so. And I'm going to hit the surface in about 8 minutes, so I may as well get ready to start burning. Okay, so this is the orientation I want to be anyway, so that's mostly what I would have wanted to do with that hydrazine. So just so it didn't look funny, actually, I used a stock type fairing to, rather than having the engine of this stage just kind of, it looks like it's just balanced on a knife's edge, this kind of makes it look like the upper stage is attached to this. There's no easy, as far as I can tell, here. Shutting down, yes, that's talking about the previous stage. There's no easy offhand way that I'm aware of to kind of have a support between the stages. Usually this just looks like everything's just sitting on the tip of that engine, which isn't very realistic in my opinion. So let's see, I want to check what science I have remaining. It looks like it wants me to do a gravity scan. Okay. Review perturbation data. Okay, let's take a look at the electric charge. How much of my electric charge is going to spend? Review radiation data. Oh. So I play without remote tech because, I don't know, I found real solar system was challenging enough and RP-0 was challenging enough, etc. You know, all the new things I add to this and learn are challenging enough that I don't really feel the need to add the difficulty of remote tech. Also, it kind of urges you to set up these satellite networks, like geosats and stuff, that I don't really find that interesting to fly up myself. I do like the challenge of throwing something into a Molniya and a geostationary or geosynchronous orbit once, but I don't want to have to do it consistently. It's not fun. It's just like kind of the stock contracts I don't enjoy, like test out a full solid rocket booster in orbit. And it's like, well, that is crazy. Only a crazy person would use it that way, and maybe the joke is, haha, that's how Kerbals are. They're crazy, but I don't find it fun, so what's the point of doing it? Now these, I really hope I set up these, oh right, I need to unlock avionics, activate avionics. There we go. It's like, I sure hope I set up these RCS thrusters to use the right fuel. I don't recall offhand testing them. Alright, looks like I did. Well, that's good. They're not optimally positioned for anything, but hey, they're just kind of thrown onto the surface of this abortion of a craft. Yes, and it kind of locks like that. It auto-sleeps the avionics. And see, it's generating and not draining. Okay, so we're approaching the surface. We're now within suicide burn range. I really probably should have been burning earlier. So relative to the moon, so a suicide burn, okay, so you can see it is negative. So I have this amount of delta V. This is my thrust-to-weight ratio relative to the moon. So I have this amount of burn time. Yeah, I probably should have started the burn a little earlier. But it looks like I'm still going to be within that crater, which is nice. Yeah, so I threw some second-generation solar panels, like the ST2, onto this, and it's got these efficient avionics, so it might actually be able to survive on the surface of the moon with just the solar panel it has on board. Ooh, right, so that little engine there doesn't have a gimbaling ability. I mean, you can't have everything with this like fairly, relatively efficient infinite ignitions engine. There we go. I think it was because my I had the roll thruster set to low energy, so if you hit caps lock, they go blue. So they thrust at about 1/10 of the regular rate. So this should give it a bit more control. And I'll just see if it can lock in that way. So I don't remember offhand if this throttles. No, it doesn't. But you can pulse it. That's That is a nice thing. So you can see the suicide burn became positive, so that means if I keep burning this way, and it's going to keep changing because of the spot I'm hitting is changing all the time. But if I keep burning, I'm going to stop 11 seconds before I hit the ground. There's all kinds of different ways to kind of imagine or calculate that. So it looks like there's science. I don't recall offhand if all the mods I'd like to use are updated in terms of science. I really like to have it automated for things like this, where, oh, seems like it's really wandering off the, oh, maybe, did I turn off the RCS again? Probably. I try not to leave RCS on. So there are mods like, so Science Alert tells you where the science is, warns you, hey, there is science you could be getting in your current location with your current craft. Gravity scan, is that you? Yep. But there's another mod. I thought this one, but it doesn't seem to be working, or maybe I need to update it or something. I can't pay that too deep of attention to every single mod I have in an install when I have this many mods. But generally, there's ones where it will detect, hey, you've got this science, and it will either transfer the science to your probe core. Speaking of which, check my probe core, or transmit it back. And so, which is great. It kind of whacks the mole for you, right? It'll use a kind of similar tool to what this is using to detect that there is science. Oh yeah. See, I'm speeding up way too fast, or I'm not decelerating sufficiently to stop with this. So this is going to smash into the moon. But hey, the more you know, right? That is kind of one of the Kerbal things that I like. It's not too difficult to do this, to just kind of launch a mission like this, and I can find out, in what way is my craft lacking. So it looks like I just did not have enough Delta V in this craft, so I could have added a couple of little extra tanks maybe, or added a little tank on the top, or had it extend out a little more, and just have this stage have more Delta V, or have more Delta V on the other one, or use a solid to slow myself down on the descent. As you can see, I looked like I had enough Delta V before, but as I approach the surface, it is very clear that I will be smashing into the surface. So the moon is starting to look blurry as you approach it. Actually, I'm still getting some pretty good science, so and of course, I still do want to carry this out, and I will totally post it, because I'm absolutely fine with posting my failures, because I think it is very important people notice, both learn kind of new useful tricks they can use in order to carry out their own RP-0 missions, but also see that even someone who literally helps develop Realism Overhaul and RP-0 and makes these failures all the time as well. I assure you, I make failures in this game all the time. So there we go. So it's becoming less blurry. So this is this fade in. It's between the two rendering modes you're called, PQS and scale space. And scaled space is how everything looks, just basically images laid over spheres or oblate objects from far away. And PQS is this literal rendering of the terrain as you zoom in. And Keel Ashley has made the moon look far better. Actually, it looks like we have a sandy texture on the moon now, which I'm not sure I like as much as I like it on Mars. But in terms of realism, is this kind of a whitish area? Yeah, sure, why not? But it's very clearly a dune-ish pattern in stripes, which doesn't strike me as very lunar. Oh wow! So that's how much Delta V I was short. I should have even turned the engines off a bit earlier, because it would make it better to orient my craft to keep the engine side pointed down. But so when I smash into the ground, where is the Earth? Is it still visible? Let me look from out here. Nope. I'm actually crashing into the dark side of the moon. Neat. But anyway, so the data that gets back from this craft will let us know how much more Delta V we need to actually land something on the moon for a soft landing, because this is approaching 0.5 kilometer of speed, possibly more by the time I get all the way down, is certainly not a soft landing. But yeah, Keel Ashley made the moon look much nicer. You can actually see the textures of things. You can see... Actually, I'm going to look at my last video where I did the lunar flyby, because I think that was before this final update, where he kind of did a final pass over a planet. But in my opinion, the sand dune kind of texture just doesn't really suit the moon. It may be making things more visible, which is nice. I feel like things are a bit bright white, But that's actually kind of one of the things they tell lunar astronauts tell us about. The magnificent desolation that you get light reflected back from the surface pretty substantially. Oh, and it might also be that. There we go. It's not as white as I made it look. So that's the ambient light adjustment, casting like a bright fluorescent light on everything from every direction. So let us look at the beauty of the moon as we crash a probe into it. I crashed a probe into it before. That was kind of my orbital one, which is this big hydrazine bus. I brought, basically like this, but it was meant to orbit, and it succeeded at orbiting the moon. And then it had just enough juice that I could crash it into the moon. And I think that's kind of, I don't think that ended up being recorded, but that was one of the cool looking things that made me decide I totally wanted to record some of the things I was doing in my RP-0 career. Oh, nice. So you can see, I don't exactly know how it gets coated in, but this kind of rocky texture at the edges of craters, as that's in kind of stock, and it's been lacking from many of our bodies. So that's a neat look that he was able to get in. Yeah, it looks like it's kind of the sand duney texture, which, yeah, in my opinion, I would prefer perhaps not, but I'd have to see the alternative, because dunes just have a very specific appearance because they're blown into position by air, right, by moving air, by winds. So in the distance you can see all these other craters and things. It's really quite interesting. Oh yeah, so you can see the crater I'm going into, and there's this little crater, and you can see it there. Like, it's just really cool that the detail that Kill Ashley is able to bring out in this full scale, like, massive moon. I think this is bigger than Kerbin actually is. So it looks like I needed almost a whole kilometer per second of delta V. So I'm going to have to really increase the size of my launch craft to bring that much more delta V down to the surface of the moon so that I can land nicely. And here goes my crasher. I think that's the one contract I didn't pick up, was for a crasher. All right, so fair enough. It did that. So thanks for watching. That was supposed to be my first soft landing, but a very similar craft design should get me to the surface. I just need another kilometer per second of delta V. Goodbye.